Hello, and welcome to our webinar today. My name is Michelle Lanter-Smith, and today we'll be talking about workforce reporting, utilizing dashboards and reports to optimize your workforce. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at EPAY, and joining me is John Gatayuso, our Senior Sales Engineer. Welcome, John.
Yep, thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everybody that's joining us today.
We will also have a special guest with us, and I won't reveal him now, but John and I are super excited to have him on the line because he's going to talk about how at his company he was able to use reporting and analytics to really trim costs significantly and make a difference in his workforce and the productivity that he saw. But first I want to get started, cover some just some housewarming and some housekeeping type of things. So first, let's go through the agenda. I'm going to tell you just a little bit about EPAY and where we come from and why workforce optimization is so important to us. We're going to talk about why data really matters to the HR departments and operational departments in your organization, what some reports look like, what you should be expecting and what you can do with them, and how you can get a return on HR, human capital management software, why it really can essentially pay for itself. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with a short demonstration of our solution. All right, so who is EPAY Systems? Well, we've been around since 2001, and we're located in the heart of the United States here in the Windy City in Chicago. And we specialize in delivering human capital management solutions to employers that have a blue-collar hourly workforce, where you really are having employees move around a lot from job site to job site, company to company. You're dealing with union contracts, shift differentials, really some complex overtime rules, maybe even a lot of issues with breaks and meal breaks and compliance and things like that. That is the world we specialize in because we know that it takes a very special software platform to support you in that, because you're dealing with some pretty significant risks. One, probably your labor is 80% of your cost of goods sold, and two, that Department of Labor is always checking you out and seeing what's going on and making sure you're following all the FLSA rules, overtime rules, and that's not even mentioning your unions and what they're monitoring. So it's a tough environment that you work in, and that's what we specialize in. We have, actually the slide needs to be updated. We have more than 75,000 sites. We have more like 150,000 sites around the world that has our solution. And we really focus, of course, on the whole platform, but the area that we specialize in is our time and labor solution, which is where we're going to focus a lot of our reporting discussions today. Now, one thing I cannot fail to mention is the support that we give our clients. Because you do work in a very gritty environment where things can get hard to manage, and sometimes payrolls and things like that can get a little tough and confusing, we believe support is a must. And so we give all of our clients 24/7 support. We get love letters every day of the week from our clients, loving the support we give them. And because of that, we have a very high retention rate, and they stick with us. So let's talk a little bit about why do reports matter. Well, I'm sure you all on the phone know why reports matter. And if we opened up the lines right now, I'm sure you could give me a bazillion reasons. But hopefully most of them will stem around reports matter because I can really see what's going on, and I can make crucial decisions to try to improve my business. We see that a lot of companies lose quite a bit of money when they don't have their eye on key metrics or key performance indicators, and they can't see those and they can't make adjustments. There's been a lot of studies recently that really kind of show that most people don't look at HR professionals as folks that have foresight and can anticipate what needs to be done in the business. But that's just not true anymore. With the analytics that you can get out of your human capital management platforms, you certainly can see what's around the corner. You can certainly see where you need to improve, things like turnover statistics and so on. But what is also important is the operation folks. Operations obviously are always in the trenches, always fighting fires, trying to manage schedules and of course their bottom line and what their margins are looking like at that bottom line. But with really good workforce analytics, you can start to see how you can teach your managers to be optimize their workforce even more. And John's going to go into some of the details and some of the analytics that we give you to help you do that. So really, when you use your reports, there's three, I guess, areas of thinking that you move through, that you progress through. First, obviously, is you want to understand. So you want to get access to the data in formats that are very usable and convenient for you. And you want to be able to see it. And then from that data, you want to be able to work with your peers and your folks below and above you to plan. So you can use those insights to really optimize, your operational efficiencies. And then finally, to execute. So you want those reports to be continuous. You want to be getting alerts when you're seeing things that you really should be paying attention to, and reminders. So all of those are key things in a reporting system. So there are basically three different areas of reporting that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about compliance reporting, operational efficiency, and budgetary. Again, in the market that we serve, we find these are reports that are crucial to really controlling your costs and mitigating your risk. So instead of just talking about this at a very high level, John, I think we're ready to take a deeper dive, and I'm going to turn it over to you because the first area we're going to talk about is operational efficiency.
Yep. So when we talk about operational efficiencies, it's really, how are you utilizing your staff, and are they working at their optimal? And part of that is to be able to schedule them out so that you know when they're scheduled to work, you know the total number of hours that they're going to work, and then you can start to actually grade them on their attendance. So if they're early, they're late, they're no-shows, you can start to see who's actually showing up for work and doing the work versus who's always late and who's a no-show. Who can I rely on? So that's really part of that optimization for your workforce. And there's different tools with that where you can look at, a staffing report to show how many resources you have scheduled for each shift and who's off on different days and things like that. Your attendance report, which will look and see, who's that early person, who's always coming in early, who's always late to leave, or who's coming into work late, or who's actually a no-show. So you're able to see that through that attendance report, or maybe you're just looking to see, who's currently here. And maybe you want to have that report scheduled out so that at 7 o'clock in the morning, you get that report and it shows you exactly who's currently here, who's currently punched in, so that you can start making the calls into the various people who aren't there. So, that on-premise report is useful in that manner. When you start to look at the actual various reports in our system, and we log in here, you'll see that there's a lot of different reports that we have available, right? And right now, I'm directed right into my dashboard, which also gives me insight, looking at exceptions and budgets and things like that, where my timesheets currently stand. But as we're talking about scheduling in here, I can go in and I can do an on-premise report. I can see who's currently here, and I'm able to see that information directly in here. So I can see I've got different people in different departments here, and I have exact insight into when they punched in and how long they've been punched in for as well. I can also go in here, and if I wanted to do my attendance report, and I go into my scheduling portion here, I can go into my attendance report, and now I can see who's a no-show, who punched in, but they weren't scheduled to work, so maybe they filled in for somebody. Maybe they weren't supposed to work, and they showed up. Who's early, late, all of that can all be seen in here. The other neat thing is that I can add a note in here as to why this person was a no-show. They got a flat tire, right? So I also have insight into that type of information so I can keep track of it, and that becomes part of my notes within the attendance report. So you have a lot of usefulness out of this, and then also being able to export to either PDF, Excel, or if you want to copy the information, you can copy the information, paste it into a Word document, into an email, or things like that. So you have a lot of functionality in here, even with the filters. So if I just wanted to see everybody that's a no-show, I can show everybody that's a no-show in here, and it goes ahead and filters it out for me. All right. As we look at some other things, budgeting is important. We find that budgeting is important for a lot of our customers because this is really how you're going to determine how I stay on budget, both in my hours as well as my dollars, because both of those matter, right? And my dollars are important because I don't want to go over that dollar mark, but hours are also important to me because I know that, hey, I'm scheduling out, 20 hours. If I go over that, that means I'm not doing a good job of bidding on this particular job because now it's costing me more to work on this than I anticipated. So there's different reports that we can look at where we can look at hours by, rate type, by the employee, by the manager. It's just breaking out that information in different ways. You can look at a detailed hours report, which will show you in and out times of the employees along with the number of hours and rate types that are associated to it. We could also look at how we're doing against our budget here versus an hour as well as dollar variance. But then also we can see, are we anticipating any overtime? So this ties into budgeting, but also ties into scheduling as well, because we can look at what their actual hours are currently versus what's remaining in the schedule, so that if I need to make adjustments to the schedule, I can go in and I can make adjustments so I'm not going over that budget or going into overtime. All right. So as we look at some of these reports, and I'll show one extra report while we're looking at these, if I go to my timesheet one and I go to my detailed hours report here, this is where I can see the employees, their in and out times, the hours, and the rate type that are associated to it, and I can see the totals in here. I can also go in, and if I want to look at an overview report, I can see how am I doing against my budget directly from here. So I see that I'm in the red here for Soldier Field, whereas here at Empire State Building, I'm still within my budget because I'm still within the green here. And you're able to see those variances directly in here. So it just gives you that easy view to see that information, as well as being able to look at it from a pay information in here as well. Now, the other thing that you can look at is a timesheet budget report. So if I want to see, between a date range in here, what my budgeted was versus my actual and what that variance was, I'm able to see that information in here as well. So a lot of different reports that can be shown. Even if I go into my timesheet is going to show me a lot of information in here as well. So if I open up Soldier Field in here, I can go in and I can see my punches here, but I can also go into details and I can see a breakdown by employee, total number of hours that they worked. If there's anything different in there, I can see that. I could also see what rates are being applied, if there's any blended overtime rates that are being calculated. I'm able to see all that information, but more importantly, if I want to get this information out of the system, I can export the data, again, via PDF, Excel, or I can copy it and paste it over. All right? So this really gives that manager that full access to see all their employees in their department, and then they can also submit their timesheets on a more mass scale, so they're not doing one individual, which becomes time-consuming. Right? So it's not only just optimizing employees, it's also optimizing your managers in the system so that they're not spending a lot of time within here. If we look at some compliance reports, we can look at accident reports. We have the ability to ask a question on our data collection devices. We can ask them, did you work safe? And then if they report an incident, we can report on that so that we can see any time somebody reported an incident. It just really helps with worker comp claims. You could also look at your ACA reporting so that you can see, how many hours are people working, what their average hours are, what my full-time equivalent calculators are. Am I still within the affordability aspect of ACA? We could also look at that hours variance report, which we've shown already. So again, it's just making sure we're within there, but also having a strong audit trail for that information. If there are changes, that becomes important for compliance as well. So if we look at coming back into the system here, and I go to look at some of those various reports, if I want to look at, my audit and compliance report, I can run that accident report. Or maybe I want to do an audit report so I can see, any time something has changed with an employee's punch, I can see what the in and out times were, I can see what the original was, and any subsequent changes that happened with that. That becomes important for any kind of Department of Labor audit. You can also include reason codes with these audit trails as well, so you know why this is happening as well, which is also important. When we start to look at ACA, I can go in and now I can start to view my various information for the full-time equivalents, or I can look at the average number of hours that the employees are working That way I can make determinations of various things. So as I look at my full-time equivalents here, based off of my measurement period here, I can see what those totals are. It also breaks it down for me here in a table. If I want to export this to Excel, I can export it. I could also go in here and I can see, average number of hours that the employees are working, so that if I want to see, everybody that's over 30 hours, I can filter that and see that information in here. Or if I want to see everybody that's less than 30 hours, I can do that as well, and I can see all of that information in there as well. Or if I want to run that affordability test, I can run that affordability test as well. Now, the other thing you can also do, though, is you can create custom reports out of the system as well. So, if a standard report isn't what's needed, you do have that report writer so that you can create custom reports. I've created reports for customers where they wanted to see by, and this is a shipping company, by boats, by position, the total number of hours and the total number of days that the employee worked by boat, by position in there. So you have that capability to add additional reports as needed. But also important to this is also the alerting portion, where you can be alerted when certain events occur, right? I want to make sure I don't go over my labor budget, but maybe I don't want to look at a report on a daily basis. I just want to be notified once I reach a particular threshold. So if I reach 89% of my threshold, notify me, so that way I can get on top of it and see where I can make my changes so I can stay within budget, right? So having the alerts as part of this is also important, because, different people operate in different ways. Some people want to use a report. Some people want to be alerted when, somebody's early or they're late, or somebody is, is going into overtime. You want to be able to generate an alert for overtime. Or you have part-time employees who want to make sure they don't go over 30 hours on a regular basis. So you can use that overtime for that as well. So really the alerts is helping process some of that information without having to look at reports on a regular basis. All right. Now, another thing that we look at are KPIs, right? And that's how we can identify, do we have any potential areas of interest to look at? And when we look at that, we can measure business and operational efficiencies looking at various things. We can look at correction lag by the manager, because we know that if they make those corrections within 24 hours, we know the data is so much more accurate that you see a reduction in the number of retro checks. How often is somebody going in and changing somebody's punch, whether they're changing the time, or they're changing the rates, or they're going in and, they have a lot of exceptions that they have to approve, right? Or they're manually adding punches into the timesheets. Those are all times you're touching an employee's punch, which becomes a compliance risk. So when we start to look at the actual KPIs within our time and labor system here, I can open this up and I can start to break down and see where that actionable intelligence is to let me know that, hey, there's something wrong in this area, right? And the blue is my actuals, the red is my average, and that can be, or where I want to be. So if if I want to be below or above that line, you can change those KPI scores in here as well, of what you're going to weight everybody. But essentially, you're aggregating all these KPIs into one score so that you can see which managers are operating more efficiently. And what's great about that is that not only do you find the outliers who are doing bad, right? So maybe they need additional training, or there's a setup issue, because that's really what those typically are. You could end up seeing fraud in there as well. I have a lot of manual punches coming in the system. Why is that happening? Oh, it's because, I have some fraud, right? Or, you have a manager that's coming into the system and changing the rates for everybody on Saturday because they're supposed to be supposed to be getting overtime. Well, one, we can limit them from not being able to make any changes to rates altogether. But two, that's a setup issue. We could set up a rule that automatically applies overtime because they worked on Saturday, right? And those are, that's a true life example that we've seen. But also being able to drill down to the data to see, okay, who's operating efficiently and who's not, because what I can do is I can look at my people that are operating very efficiently, and I can see, how are you doing it? Because maybe they're doing it in one of the best ways possible, and I can utilize that and leverage that so that I can push that as a standard operating procedure across my entire company, right? So that helps me find how to do it best, because sometimes it's not an area manager or regional manager that's going to know how to do it best. It's going to be that manager on site that's going to know, or even the employee on site that's going to know. All right, so being able to look at all these different variances, though, it is really helpful to identify how we can reduce those labor costs by looking at all these different KPIs. And you'll see there's also, maybe I've got a high overtime percentage. I'm not scheduling the right people in the right time. I'm always scheduling Johnny Reliable because he's always available and I know he's going to show up. Well, great, he's got a lot of overtime. I can actually look at my schedule and see, if I schedule this person, are they going to go into overtime? No, I'm okay with that. And that way you can reduce your overtime. But also grading them how well they schedule against their budget, right? So I can look at my actual and projected and my budgeted and see my hours variance in here and my dollar variance. That way I can go ahead and I can accurately schedule and see how well I'm doing.
Well, good information. Love our analytics that are out today. And I want to tell you guys a little story about how we actually were able to build out these analytics. So one of our key clients, ISS Facility Services, we've worked with them for quite a while, since 2014, had been using our time and attendance solution and in the U.S. and obviously seeing some pretty good results with it, but wanted to take it to the next level. So working with ISS, we were able to build out the analytics that John just took you through today. Today, I am super excited to have with us Christian Contreras. And Christian has been with ISS for probably 17 years, quite a while. I do have to say that because of his work in analytics and everything he's been able to accomplish there, we have wooed him over to our side. He is now with EPAY, where he's working on these analytics with other clients and helping them to implement them and really get really good simple results, the same that ISS receives. So welcome, Christian. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Awesome. Thank you for that warm welcome. And also thank you, John, for the excellent presentation. So good afternoon, everyone. I just want to spend a few minutes sharing my story and successes of WPID. As John mentioned, my name is Christian Contreras, and I am what you would call a power user of EPAY's Blue Force and TLM systems. Now at ISS, we started the process of developing our own internal analytics using a third-party tool. Now in doing that, we did this more so to assist our own research and to back up our own hunches that there was some dollar savings to be made in our labor numbers, and we, however, did not have any solid numbers to provide any validity to that hunch. So we called EPAY, we leaned on them, and essentially began a partnership to develop the tools for us and customers alike to be able not to only have a better view, but to better manage their daily labor. Now, this allowed us to be able to maintain a tight wage and hour compliance, but at the same time allowed us to run a lean back office, which improved our profitability straight across the board. Now, at ISS, we took those 5 KPIs that John mentioned a short while ago, and we developed them, we dug into them, and just took a closer look as to where we could see benefits, specifically around cost savings. Now, this was done by first identifying the situations where manual timesheets were being used to capture employee time, and then we ensured that those same employees were using the system properly. Now, by that one small change alone, this also meant that the payroll department itself, could truly focus on payroll versus having to focus on manual entries. Now, this simple concept, and it's a very, very simple concept, reduced the payroll processing admin time by 95%. Now, that large percentage, that number alone, could have stopped us at ISS from searching for additional benefits. Now, there was more to look at. We knew there was more to look at. We knew there were some additional points to take away from this whole scenario. So the big key point that we learned was that EPAY's time and labor management system allowed us to push the payroll processing function to the field operators and to the field users where that process really should sit and belong. So now ISS was able to quickly identify those locations and managers that also were doing other things within the payroll processes, such as changing pay rates. Essentially, pay rates being changed in the timesheet view from what was on the employee record. Now, in turn, that in turn ensured us that the employees were, by being able to identify those, we were able to ensure that those employees were paid based on the proper budgeted amounts for that job. Now, as John mentioned earlier about budgets, and I'm sure all of you are quite familiar that the facilities industry is driven on low margins. So very small room for error when it comes to labor. Budgets for the jobs are going to be key for the job profitability and key to the successes of your businesses. Now, we were also able at ISS were able to identify those managers who were changing time cards, which further led into the labor cost concerns. So in all, ISS was also able to, with that changing of time cards, we were able to go in there and retrain our employees, also address the managers' concerns or maybe familiarity of using the system. But in all, we were able to eliminate touches to the time data. We were able to further help reduce the compliance risk, and that also meant that we were very confident in our data in the event of an audit, and that becomes key when we're talking about time and wage hour compliance. Now, so finally, the real-time analytics were able to send us notifications of problems, enabling the managers themselves to immediately identify issues and significantly decrease the number of missed or incorrect punches. In all, of all these little things that we came out of and using from specifically using the tools and the WPID, this all resulted in an overall 1% cost savings in total labor spend for the company. Now, that alone was close to a seven-figure reduction in payroll dollars out the door. Now, I hate to sound cliche here, but the WPID more than paid for itself in a very, very short period of time, and in turn, ISS reaped the benefits via dollar signs. Now, my kind of now as being a firm user and experiencing the successes of WPID, I will say that EPAY will gladly work with you to help you understand not only how to use WPID, but more so to how better view your labor using the same analytics we did. My recommendation for all of you on the call would be to check out WPID, check out the WPID module, and immediately start reaping the benefits that I and ISS saw. With that, I know I've gone probably longer than I should have gone on this call, but I just hope that my success story here further motivates you and your companies to move forward with WPID. So again, thank you, John, and again, thank you, Michelle, for allowing me to share that success story with everybody.
Thanks, Christian. Hey, Christian, if you don't mind, we have a question that's coming in right now.
Okay.
In terms of training, obviously it had to take a lot of training to get your managers to be able to learn how to look at the Workforce Performance Indicator dashboard, the WPID. How did you go about executing that training?
Thank you. That's a very good question because the process it's actually a simple process. It does take kind of an all hands on deck and everyone on the same page and committed to this success. We did a variety of different ways. We did some train the train the trainer and kind of quote unquote there processes where we train some of our key supervisors and then supervisors in turn help with that process. It's funny how I like to say peer pressure sometimes comes into play because certain managers are improving or there's a lot of successes going on in their area, so other supervisors want to follow in that same suit. We also did webinars where we jumped on a call and sort of like we're doing here on kind of a go-to-meeting setting. We went through and offered different variety of sessions that way. And also, I know EPAY also offers a path of education also that we leaned on as well. So some variety of different ways. And I guess that question would probably it's a good question, but I guess each company themselves will know what resources internally they have to accomplish this. And I think that would answer the question.
Good. One more question that we see coming in. You mentioned the seven-figure savings. Was that all in payroll, saving payroll admin time, or were there other areas that added up to that seven-figure savings?
Well, that focus was strictly just on the total labor cost. So, um, different different little things that we were doing maybe incorrectly, or maybe not using the system correctly, or not enforcing the fact that it's key that EPAY puts out a excellent time and labor system here. We need to use it properly. Um, all of those those little issues dealing around labor were by looking at those KPIs offered in the WPID. It sort of like slapped us in the face. I mean, it was like, wow, we're not doing this. Why are we not doing this right? And if we were just to do it right, how much could we spend? So it goes back to that hunch I mentioned. We knew that we could save some money. We knew there was issues out there, but we quickly didn't know how to address it. But once we saw those KPIs, it was very apparent that we had labor. So that 1% is strictly on labor. That was strictly just doing things the proper way. It didn't. We did reduce some overhead, not much. Some of this is just having the field drive the process, having the field recognize the issues and address them when they occurred. So that's really just a field operations kind of area where we saw that 1%.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Christian. Really appreciate you coming on the line with us and sharing the ISS story.
Great. Thank you, Michelle.
All right, well, we are at our time limit, so I just want to wrap up. Just to remind all of you on the phone, we would love to work with you on your time and labor management and have you get the same type of results, that 1% in labor cost savings that ISS saw using our Workforce Performance Indicator dashboard. But of course, there's a lot of other reporting and tools that John didn't even get to, but hopefully you have a little bit better idea of some of the budgetary, operational, and compliance type of tools that are out there. We offer a full solution, however, from pre-hire to retire, that being applicant tracking, so recruiting your employees, onboarding your employees in our human resource management system. Of course, for those that receive benefits, managing benefits and open enrollment. In addition to time and labor, we also have our payroll and tax module where we can handle all the payroll and tax and garnishment issues that you may have. And then finally, we do have a performance management system too, that for your staff that you want to really work on building up and work on assessing and appraising, we have that solution also. So it's a fully integrated solution, and we'd love to be able to share it with you. Thanks so much, John, for doing your demonstration today. Really appreciate you joining me.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And thank you, everybody that joined us today. And Christian, big thank you to you for your story about ISS and how we were able to help ISS as well. So appreciate that.
Great. Well, when you exit today, we're going to ask you to take just a short little survey so we can learn more. And also, let us know if you want to see a 2-minute tour of our solution, or if you'd actually like to see a personalized demo by John, and Christian probably would be happy to join and talk a little bit more about the ISS story if you would like that. Invite your colleagues and we'll personalize something for you. So just let us know, and we'd like to take it to the next step. Well, at EPAY, we would like to be your human capital management provider. Thank you again for joining us, and until next time, have a great day.